So we've had a lot of serious injuries in boxing over the past year. We've had several fatalities. And I did a couple of videos about this. And in those videos, I talked about the fact that a lot of fighters are carrying concussions and other brain injuries into fights, unbeknownst to the public, unbeknownst to the commission. Because fighters are often not brain scanned on the week of the fight. If you did brain scan fighters on the week of the fight, many of them wouldn't be allowed to box. But I can see why that doesn't happen, because promoters and broadcasters, etc., don't want that kind of uncertainty. Imagine you've pumped all this money into promoting a fight. You've laid down guarantees and you've booked the venue and you've paid all kind of money for promotion and what have you. You've done press conferences. You've already sold pay-per-views, before the fight has taken place. And then on the week of the fight, somebody can't get licensed because they've taken too much punishment in sparring and training camp and therefore can't pass the brain scan. So I can see why it doesn't happen. But if we want to reduce the number of serious injuries that we're getting in boxing, this is what we're going to have to do, or one of the measures we're going to have to take. Is literally after all the sparring's been done on fight week, fighters need to be brain scanned to make sure they're not going in there with any kind of brain injury, concussions or anything like that. So what am I talking about here? Well, Phil Greco has spoken out for the first time about his condition going into the Amir Khan fight. He lost that fight by first round knockout. I'm sure a lot of people, particularly Khan fans, are going to say that Phil Greco's just lying and making excuses for the loss. I suspect he's not. I could be wrong, but I suspect he's not. He said that he actually had a concussion going into the Khan fight. He said the reason he was wearing dark glasses at the press conference for the Amir Khan fight was because bright lights were hurting his eyes. And these are symptoms of concussion, people. Concussions in boxing are like sprained ankles in football. It's so common, it's unbelievable. As I say, I had headaches and all kinds of other strange neurological symptoms from fights and sparring sessions when I was boxing. And you're in such a warrior mindset that you don't think much of it. As worrying as that is, that's how fighters tend to be. You just tend, I'll be all right. Little headache. You just tend to brush it off. Of course, as an older person now, I'm a lot more concerned about my own health and well-being. But as a young man, you just go with the flow. And that's what a lot of these fighters do. As I've spoken about before, I remember Ola Afolabi used to be a regular sparring partner for the Klitschko's. And I remember him saying that Klitschko hit him with a right hand, Vladimir, I think it was, in sparring one day. And he had a headache for about 3 days afterwards. He suffered some kind of neurological damage. That's why he had a headache for 3 days afterwards. So the stuff that Phil Greco is saying here, and if you want to read the article for yourselves, it's on a website called inews.co.uk. Yeah, he says he went into it with a concussion, and that basically explains why Khan was able to get him out of there so quickly. Yeah, he said he never saw it coming in terms of the shots that ended the fight. He said, and he meant that literally because of the fact that his eyesight was compromised by the concussion. So he literally never saw the shots coming because, again, he was in pain in terms of his eyes when he saw bright lights and stuff like that. He said he went to the doctor and told him he was seeing blurry, feeling confused and having all these negative thoughts. He says, I was extremely mentally tired and physically drained. I said to myself, maybe I'm just overthinking, but I was concussed. I couldn't keep my thoughts together. So, yeah, anyway, I'll leave you guys to read the whole article for yourselves, but it's food for thought. Boxing is a very, very dangerous sport, and perhaps some of these recent tragedies could have been avoided if we had brain scans on the week of the fight. You're never going to avoid all of them. There's always going to be tragedies in boxing. That's just the nature of the profession. But you can reduce them, in my opinion. And that would be one way to do it. And I also spoke about some of the sparring gloves that are used. A lot of the headgear is very densely padded. The sparring gloves are very dense. You see, when you go into a professional fight, any of you who have fought professionally or have just worn professional gloves, maybe some of you buy pro gloves just to train in them to see what they feel like. Professional fight gloves, depending on the make and model, are very, very hard. All right. If you have a pair of rival Guerreros, for example, with the HDE, with the firm padding, it's literally like a brick on your hand. It's rock. It's almost like a fist. That's how hard a rival Guerrero glove is with the HDE F padding. And same thing with Grants and various other professional fight gloves. They're very, very hard. Fine. But in the gym, when you're sparring, you don't need to have gloves that are that hard. You can use softer gloves. Gloves that are not going to do so much damage. And I am convinced through my own experience, sparring people that are wearing these hard gloves, and you've also got a very hard headgear on, I feel far more of a jolt when I'm getting hit with hard gloves and I've got a hard headgear on than when I'm fighting somebody that's got softer gloves, you know, like Winnings or any kind of gloves like that are less densely padded. It's less of a jolt that you feel. It doesn't have as much of an impact on you. So, yeah, some fighters want to wear gloves that are the same kind of density as fight gloves in sparring. But I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but it's unnecessary in my view. You're going to do damage to your opponent when you step in the ring with the fight gloves on. You don't need to be damaging your sparring partners to that extent. Yeah, you can try to, but we don't need to facilitate that by making sparring gloves that are just as dense as fight gloves. So I think there needs to be some kind of regulation, actually, in professional boxing with regards to the types of sparring gloves and headgears that can be used. Because in amateur boxing, there is regulation with regards to the gloves and headgear. In professional boxing, there's no regulation at all with, what people are wearing in sparring. And I think people need to look into that, So anyway, have a read of the article for yourselves. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. It's Hammer, and I'm out.